Hi there, and welcome to Canceling COVID. I'm Tanya Rivens checking in with you on this wonderful day as I continue to produce and share with you information as we continue inside of this Tuesday. Coming together and sharing with you information. Of course, we are going to talk about today a report that has been done that really opens up information about what is happening in our community. There we go. So you get to get the full screen. But a very powerful report that looks at the impact of COVID 19 on our low income communities. And as you can imagine, some great information that's going to be made available for you for that. And certainly, hopefully, as a community, we will look at this information and see how resourceful it is and how important it is that we are taking care of one another and making sure that we address these issues. To start out, of course, things are starting to improve once more, and that could be a relative term depending on what you consider improvement. But the pandemic is still with us, and it's easy to forget about all the precautions that we should still be taking, especially since we've been dealing with this now for more than 2 years, heading into our third year. And so it's a lot to have to deal with. And the conversation around mask mandates, we've had these conversations continuously. Let me pause and say I'm grateful for Groundwater Solutions, who always talking about masking up and precautions, as well as Charlotte Mecklenburg County Public Health. We're grateful for their support. charmecnc.gov is where we'll go. We'll get their information up for you as well. But again, they're constantly providing and reminding us that there's information available. Most importantly, they're a sponsor of the show, and so we're grateful for that. So again, Groundwater Solutions will be with us in just a minute. I mentioned Mecklenburg County, mecnc.gov, mecnc.gov, 980-314-9400 for information. And they're available just to answer questions. Groundwater Solutions, the same, available to answer questions for you and services. Dr. Tracia Black will join us in just a moment. But let's dive in and talk about a couple of things, starting with, I mentioned the improvement around COVID-19 and how we're handling this. And there's a call now for mask mandates to be, well, frankly, people feel like we don't need them anymore. And it will soon be more than likely a personal choice. We've talked about how you can never stop taking precautions, but because regardless, COVID-19 is a part of our daily lives. It's the new norm for us. And so we just have to make those adjustments. Experts are saying there's a lot to consider before you just go barefaced. And of course, we realize that the number of cases are spiking. The spike in cases rather have dropped, but also keep in mind we are still losing people to COVID-19 as a result of this virus. So we still got the cold months. I see that we're going to spring ahead real soon. March will be here before you know it, but we'll still be inside a lot and dealing with the cold weather. Flu season is upon us as well. But with that said, we only have 30 minutes and it goes really quickly. I want to start by bringing Dr. Tracia Black on. She's going to kind of just share with us where they are with things. We bring her on every week. She is out in the community, grassroots, and committed to serving our community. She's been with me from day one and has provided some really great nuggets of information. And now that we see things starting to change yet again, we're fearful of getting into that pocket, that place where you feel like, okay, it's back to normal again, and we don't have to deal with that. And certainly, Groundwater Solutions is having to deal with their part because you had the spike in testing and now testing is dying down again. So good morning, Dr. Black, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I would be lost without you coming on and at least giving us great updated information. So I
I would
kind of
love to do that.
mentioned, well, I appreciate you so much. And so we see and we know that the spike now in the
Mhm,
cases are starting to drop. I mentioned, but we're still losing lives as a
mhm.
result of COVID. So it's still with us. But what are you guys seeing now that your testing numbers have started to slow down?
So again, you're absolutely right. I think across the board, testing numbers are way down. You'll see the sites like our site at Union County or the StarMed locations around our community that their lines are not there anymore. And so the
Right.
concern is that we still need to have our guards up. We need to still have safety precautions, like you were talking about with the mask mandates. I do think the mandates are going to go away. I'm
Mhm.
There probably will remain mandates within businesses and governmental organizations, but there'll be more concierge style testing. That's what we're seeing now. We're making that available for the community since it's a waste of resources to set up actual community sites. We are focusing on concierge services. That means that if you have a family that you want to be tested. In fact, we tested a family of 6 the other day. They called in and someone was sick. So, and we do that pretty frequently throughout the week. So we will come to you in your home to test you. We will be at your family dinner, but we want our community to keep your guards up. I go places and I am the only one in the room wearing a mask, and I still wear my mask because I'm comfortable with that. My family members continue to wear their masks just because we know that we don't want to be sick, and COVID is not fun, and COVID can be dangerous.
And interesting that you said that. It seems like, and just my opinion, because my mom's 85, we were out and about for the weekend, and we had our mask on, and others didn't. It looks like people aren't trying to, kind of mask shame you like it was happening before. I may be off the mark, but people kind of are accepting, your choice, whatever you do, that's fine with me. I'm not wearing mine, but I hopefully
and vice versa, Tanya, that if you're masking, accept the person's choice who may be out there with you not to mask. So we have to have shared respect in that.
And that's right. There has to be a balance. Don't be offended if I'm not wearing a mask and you are. Respect both ways. And you've been big on that as well. So concierge testing, let's talk about that a little bit briefly. I know you're at a seminar, a session. How do people go about, and let's push that so that people can realize, because what a relief if you got a family of 6, and even if there are not long lines, if you can all gather at one place and somebody come to you, that's so convenient.
So we're still testing at our office on Monday through Friday, but what we offer is if you have 2 or more family members, you can call our office at 704-596-0505, or you can text at 704-492-7222. I'll give you that number one more time, 704-492-7222, and say, hey, I have 3 people who need to be tested, and we will make an appointment and come to you at your convenience, at your home, your workplace. So we are doing appointment-driven testing now.
Good. Now, if they go to their website, your website, is that information on there as well? I've got your website and phone number up, so I don't have the text.
I would say that it's probably not a place that you can make an appointment on that site. We are working on that, but it is not active yet. So you actually have to call in to make an appointment.
Okay. Well, Dr. Black, again, I know that you're in some type of session today, and I appreciate all that you're doing. As we let you go, is there anything else that you would like to share?
No, just that stay encouraged, and keep educating your family and your community members, and keep yourself safe.
Absolutely. And we appreciate you again, always bringing great information. And this concierge testing now, another option for so many people, and there's so many things you can do with that as we start to see activities pick up. And we talked about this before, whether you've got a family reunion or you're gathering for a wedding, we want to have the knowledge so that we have the power to deal with this as we continue, because we know coming down the road, there'll be another strain. And we also know that this is not going anywhere.
In the interim, you need to incorporate these types of practices into your family's healthcare.
Well, thank you again so much for taking the time to talk with us. Again, everyone, Dr. Tracia Black, always here with us. Groundwater Solutions, 704-596-0505, groundwater-solutions.org. And also the opportunity to reach out. You've got the number here if you need to reach out and get the information for the text message, information that she just provided, so that you can make an appointment. Now, the next guest that I have joining us is going to be a really great conversation, because I think that we know that COVID has disrupted our lives in so many ways. But sometimes we just kind of overlook and forget about how we're going to be dealing with this for quite some time. And this individual here, a part of a group that has taken the time to have a study done and have the information to help try to get out this report, a very detailed report. The Kenan Institute at UNC did this report, and it assesses the impact of COVID-19 on low-income households and communities in this state right here, in the state of North Carolina. And this is some heavy stuff that we need to talk about. So I got my friends over at Charlotte Area Fund that's joining me. Hey, Nick, thank you for taking the time to join us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's such a nice opportunity to see you, and also see Dr. Black, who stopped in momentarily and shared some insight.
Yeah, you guys are doing a great job working in the community, and that's what we're here to try and educate our community, provide real resources, real talk, and information that they probably wouldn't find anywhere else. And so let's dive into this report. First of all, let's talk about, why was this report necessary?
Well, it's clear the North Carolina Community Action Association that commissioned this study is the advocacy arm, if you will, communications arm of the 34 community action agencies in the state. And they are federally sponsored anti-poverty initiatives that are in every county in the state. They are frontline troops, if you will, working to help low-income families reach self-sufficiency. There's 1,000 community action agencies around the state, but there are 34 in North Carolina. And I'm fortunate enough to chair the Council of Executive Directors and also serve on the board of the North Carolina Community Action Association. And Sharon Goodson, who has just extraordinary leadership, her team initiated this report with the Keenan Institute, as you mentioned, with great scholars, because we recognize even before COVID-19 that families, low-income families across the state were being impacted. We were talking about social determinants of health prior to COVID, right? And so this pandemic did a whole range of things. It opened up a lens into the deep racial disparities and health justice, and how Black and brown communities and poor white communities in the state were severely being impacted. And so the study was warranted. I would say more about the study.
Okay. Well, and I apologize. I didn't introduce you properly. As you might imagine to our viewers, I know Nick, and his name is Nick Wharton. Try to give him the proper introduction instead of just talking to my friend, but he is somebody that I worked with and does great work in the community, and we're grateful for Charlotte Area Fund. So let's delve into the report then. Let's talk about what you found. Let's say what's some of the things that really stood out in this report. And I see you guys hopping on. Please listen carefully. And if you have a comment, a question, just drop it in our chat here.
So the study was focused on looking at 5 communities really across the state. And it was based on sort of evidence-based research, focus groups, where they really were talking with clients of community action agencies. And clearly, we looked at behavioral responses to all the protective measures that were going on. You know, there were clearly hardships and economic fallout that impacted families. We also looked at coping strategies, the adequacy of relief measures. Community action agencies also received significant CARES dollars. $1 billion across the country rather, was focused on community action agencies as frontline troops. And a portion of that came to North Carolina and community action agencies, right, to really work with families that have been impacted, right, by COVID-19. And so we provided emergency assistance, a whole range of support services. So as we reflect on this, nothing almost seems surprising now, because we've heard everything conceivably that can impact folks' lives, right? The study really was done at the height of COVID-19. So there are just a number of things. We realized that a heavy toll was impacted on families, right? The exposure to deaths from coronavirus, right? Major employment challenges, where families really had to focus on their own sort of survival skills, notwithstanding government support, public-private partnerships, coordination among nonprofits. But these families, as they shared in focus groups, they needed to do a lot for themselves, right? They'd already been doing for themselves already, but it seemed even more drastic. We live in Charlotte, North Carolina, but families in the mountain region, different parts of the state, who really did not have the sort of infrastructure, the sort of social network that we may think we have not as developed. In those areas, they were severely impacted.
So Nick, when you talk about that, it seems like such a huge task, and you talked about all the agencies that are involved. How did you guys really get a grasp on this, and was it difficult to organize and to get out and really get this information?
Well, again, I was not leading this research. I was probably one of the 5 regions that provided our clients, right, to be a part of the focus group, right? So I didn't lead this. North Carolina Community Action Association led the study. And by the way, the study can be found at the North Carolina Community Action Association website. It's about an 82-page report. It lists a whole range of impacts, and I can kind of go through a few of them if you like.
Yeah, let's do that. And to your point, I've got the website listed also on
Right.
across the screen so that people can check into it. But I would like for you to kind of go through a few of them and then kind of say what would be shocking for our viewers. Like what in this report would really be eye-opening? Because some of the things that you've already listed, we all were dealing with them, but obviously for low income, it was
Yeah.
compounded even more. And I think that's
Yeah.
what you already verified.
Yeah. I mean, so if we kind of look at the sort of some of the DNA of how things progress, we know at the height of COVID, we weren't really thinking about Black and brown families in terms of how they were impacted. We would talk about
Right.
international, and we were concerned about other issues, right? But
Hmm.
here in our region, um, the great work of Deborah Weeks and the Black Forum of Health Professionals came together
Uh-huh.
to really want adequate information about how the virus was impacting Black and brown families. And there was some concern about how do we get that information, right? And
Right, right.
so we ended up getting it, right? And so vaccine uh, testing and vaccinations became a big issue, right? So when we look at the report, it really tells through the words of many clients how they were faring, right? So, for instance, um, vaccine hesitancy,
Right.
right, still remains a factor. That study, I'm kind of pulling out something that's still germane right now. Vaccine hesitancy in African American communities is still, in Black and brown communities, is still of grave concern. You mentioned earlier we're coming out and we're relaxing certain mandates and so forth.
Right.
I got it. But in the African American and Black and brown communities, vaccination hesitancy is still a factor, right?
And that's really
Yeah.
surprising that there's not more education around that, which is one of the things I've been pushing. And now, what better time than now where we see things kind of lightening up just a bit to continue the conversation. And so clearly that's shocking that there's hesitancy and no one's addressing that issue. What else would be pretty surprising?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. There are a number of organizations that are trying to address that. In fact, we're
Okay.
going to be partnering with a communication campaign, really,
Hmm.
to get more word out in continually impacted communities, right?
Okay.
Because as society sort of opens back up, we still in a very, from a racial equity perspective,
Right.
consideration of Black and brown families is not of high importance, right?
That's correct.
So we got to keep the lens on how families are faring, and they
Hmm.
still are. Their backs are against the wall, still,
Right.
right? And
Uh-huh.
so that's really a factor.
So anything else that you might see or want to uplift?
Sure, I think this whole notion of uh, caregivers, we now have I think a different view of community caregivers. Prior to
Okay.
this, we weren't really thinking about how important they were. And this is
Mhm.
and oftentimes we're talking about African American women at lower paid, sort of underpaid kinds of roles, right?
Mhm.
Many family members who become caregivers, right? That really exploded. And I think
Yeah.
some organizations, perhaps Bank of America is one, that provide dollars to families, for caregivers,
Mhm.
right? And that wasn't really provided across the board.
Right.
So that became a new language, a new way of thinking about the community. And as I mentioned, African American women who oftentimes serve in these underpaid roles, who are working with family members and community members who have chronic illnesses, right? And their
Mhm.
job, in many cases, is to support those families. So we have a bit. So going forward, not probably, but I think it's important to sort of professionalize. We need to provide much more training for caregivers in the community who are sort of below the radar, but
Right.
they were
Right.
in the full force, right? Not only were they more likely to be infected, right, because they were exposed, right, but they also were the caregivers. There were a lot of frontline individuals who bared out in the study that we weren't really concerned about, right? Baggage checkers, those individuals in the low wage jobs, they were
Right.
really impacted. So we heard their voices in terms of desperation and the lack of concern for their well-being.
So what about food? We heard a lot about access to food, and I partnered my nonprofit. We did like a whole month, and that whole farmers to families, those food
Yeah.
boxes. When you look
Yeah.
at these outlying areas, how did they fare?
Well, yeah, that continues to be, and those are factors pre-COVID, right?
Yeah,
COVID's
right.
exacerbated, right? The structural racism that impacts, low-income Black and Brown families. I'll say to you, back in July, we partnered with the Park Church, and we were part of this concept that North Carolina Community Action launched called the Big Pop-Up, right?
Mhm.
So they had 5 of these major drive-throughs where you support families with household goods, food produce, a whole range of support that Pampers, a whole range of things that families really didn't have access to. So we had an
Right.
event there, and we had close to 2,000 individuals, almost 900 cars drove through the Park Ministries parking lot, and we served these families. And these were families that were newly impacted, right,
Yeah.
by poverty. These were working poor, working
But
class
now,
folks.
Nick, is not
Mhm.
the SNAP program, is that not being made available as well? Because first of all, thank you all for that, and that was a huge and a very much needed successful event. And when we did my nonprofit did its event, and it was around July as well. I had someone in Watauga County reach out to me and ask if there's some way somehow we could get the food up to them, and I was like, I don't know what to say because I don't have anyone that can drive it up to you. And my heart just went out to her because here we are in Mecklenburg County and they're in Watauga asking for food. But I do know that the
Right.
SNAP program, which I wasn't aware, if like for students, they're on free and reduced lunches. They offered that to some of the families. I don't know. I hear a little
Sure.
bit of echo. I
Well,
don't know. But I just wanted to say, did that not kick in and help some of the families?
sure it did. And again, that's not that I'm not entirely familiar with um, how that operated in detail on the ground. But what we'll say, obviously, kids not in school, we certainly
Right.
had heard lots of reports that hot meal or that lunch, that breakfast that kids
Hmm.
were accustomed to, they weren't getting. And
Yeah.
so, food um, was a serious concern, and quite frankly, it still is. If we had
Yeah.
an event similar to what we had in July, we would probably have, I'd say maybe twice the number of
Wow.
people that would show up. Now, picture
Yeah.
that for a minute, right? We're in a
Yeah.
city that has this great, resources, and we're moving along, right?
Hmm.
But there
Hmm.
still are many families that are not a part of the sort of winning solution to this. They're not a part of it.
So what are the future implications of what's in this report? I mean, what does that tell us?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that a number of things. As I mentioned before, um, obviously leveraging community action agencies across the state, and I
Mhm.
think we learned some important lessons. Um, and as a practical matter, is collaboration across organizations, public-private partnerships, right? I think that was a sort of before we were probably operating in silos, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I think for us and for many 34 community action agencies across the state, um, one big takeaway is that we have to collaborate, right? Because none of us can do this alone. So that was, I think, a big one. I think,
Yeah.
as I mentioned before, the impact on women and particularly poor women in terms of the labor force, the kinds of support that comes. You mentioned before about food deserts and some of the creative things that are going on. We need to really
Right.
support women in entrepreneurial wealth creating opportunities. I think that's a really important takeaway. And I might also add in this childcare space, I think that's an area that we really ought to develop more support services, more entrepreneurial opportunities for women, and not just for women, but for women who were impacted in that space, right? So I think that's an important uh, recommendation. I think, to say the least. I think the other part is community land banks and community land trusts to really focus on affordable housing. Obviously, that became and still is
Right.
a critical consideration. And I think also, this whole notion of, relying on, government support. People have lots of different perspectives about that, but they usually come into play when we're talking about working class and poor people needing services, right? And
Yeah.
I think that became even more important as we look at this Build Back America plan that's in play. There are a number of things being sort of sliced away from that
Yeah.
impact poor people, right? And I
Mhm.
think we have to keep our eye on that. We cannot shrink from that responsibility, right?
So
That's really important.
one of the things
Mhm.
that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, and that would be you've given a recommendation, which I appreciate, because one of the questions, what can the community do as we start to wind down? We've got about less than 4 minutes. I haven't asked this before, but and I don't know if you are even aware, but the insurance industry, how cool would it be if, as we get healthcare insurance, there's some type of insurance that we can tie into COVID, or some type of way that would cover us if we're out sick, to cover your day at work, or even the insurance when it comes around your business being closed. I know insurances right now, insurance companies are kind of, I'm not going to say squabbling, but I know they probably aren't that happy having to cover all the cost of tests. And there's conversation about, can you limit the amount and how much would they cover? But do you know, or have you guys had any conversation or any inkling around that topic?
Well, we haven't expanded Medicare. There's just some systemic dynamics that ought to play out for us, right? We just
Right,
have to
right.
expand that. That would be helpful, right?
That
But
sure
I have
would.
not been a part of that conversation. But clearly, you're onto something. We recognize, even with the Affordable Care Act, one major health crisis, right, and families of many economic means could be destroyed, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think COVID-19 clearly revealed that.
Yeah. So as we wrap things up, tell people where they can find the report. Like, I've got the website link here, but just so people that are interested can go and check out this report, because it's very informative. And I just wish that people would take the time to become educated on all
Yeah,
this information, because as a community, we're going to wear this for a while.
we are. We are.
Yeah.
Well, you can go to the North Carolina Community Action Association website, and there's lots of really good information on community action agencies and what they're doing for low-income folk across the state, how they're providing an economic engine to get people up, working, living fuller lives, and moving them to self-sufficiency. So I think that's a great website to go to.
All right. Well, Nick Warden, Charlotte Area Fund, I want to say thank you for joining us. I really appreciate you all. Appreciate you, Ms. Dunstan, and the whole crew, Natalie, for keeping everyone informed. And hopefully you'll come back as we continue work through this. I know it's just natural for people to kind of drop their guard right now, which is nice.
Yeah,
We're all tired, but we've got to at least
yeah.
have in our mind, as you share that information is still going on, our work is still there.
Right. Well, it is. 75% of folk have gotten across the country have gotten their first shot of vaccination. We need to go get people to get the booster. We need to continue to get vaccinated. That's the bottom line.
Right.
Don't sleep on this. We
Well,
need to get vaccinated.
great, great stuff. Again, Nick Warden of the Charlotte Area Fund, thank you again for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you so.
Oh, I didn't mean to cut Nick off. Sorry about that, Nick. Thank you. I appreciate you. I did include the thank you. Again, you can go to the report at keenaninstitute.unc.edu/publication/assessing the impact of COVID-19 on low-income households and communities in North Carolina. It's really important, folks, that we continue to educate ourselves and take advantage of these resources that are out there and available for us as you continue to navigate. Again, a lot of places are dropping their mask mandates, and they're giving you the opportunity. And I like what Dr. Tracia Black mentioned, that you have an opportunity. You can either respect the person that chooses not to wear and respect the person that chooses to wear. But what we don't want is the division that we started to see when all this started out. And there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise. But you don't have to buy into it, and you don't have to tune into it. I see you guys hopping on. I'd love to hear your comments. Hey, Frederick, thank you for hopping on. We appreciate your support. But most importantly, we appreciate you all at least being attentive and wanting to know about what's happening with canceling COVID. We'll be back on next week. Before I go, I want to share this great conversation that I'm a part of tonight, talking to your kids about race. If we don't keep them in the dark, Our kids will light up the world. I just love my friends down in Matthews, Pastor Chuck and Dr. Whitley. This is the topic of the conversation tonight. Again, talking to your kids about race. If we don't keep them in the dark, our kids will light up the world. It's tonight at 7 p.m. We're going to be at Matthews United Methodist Church. Yours truly is moderating this conversation. It starts at 7 p.m. I'd love for you to hop online. I'm looking to make sure where you can go to Matthews United Methodist. They're on Facebook and log on to this conversation. They've got a great African-American speaker who has written a book. And I just like the fact that they're not afraid to keep this conversation going. I just recently saw an article talking about how the next wave of violence and just everything that we really don't stand for as believers is starting to grow and build in the churches. So here are a group of ministries that say, you know, not in our church. And they've been doing this now for 13 years, holding this conversation. I've been fortunate enough, and I say this in a very humble way, to moderate it for 12 of those sessions. And it's not 13 years, 13 sessions rather. And I've been able to moderate it for 12 sessions. And it's a great opportunity to just have a frank dialogue. Real talk is what we like, with a diverse group, just being very transparent and talking about dealing with these issues. Again, you can see here the information for getting the report. I'm grateful to Nick and Nick Warden for taking the time to talk with us. I'm always appreciative of Groundwater Solutions, Dr. Tracia Black, always providing good information. So if you're interested in concierge testing, that's a great option for you. And thank you to Mecklenburg County Public Health for taking the time to support this effort to educate our community. McNC.gov 980-314-9400. It's time for me to wrap things up. I just, again, would like to say thank you as always for supporting Canceling COVID as we continue to maneuver and deal with this thing called COVID, because together we can work to cancel it. It'll never go away, folks. We know that. But we can work towards solutions and provide information so that you will have options. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Get out and enjoy this wonderful day. I'll see you on Saturday. Sounds of Inspiration, Praise 100.9 FM, PraiseCharlotte.com online, or you can use the mobile app. Join me at 10 a.m. for Sounds of Inspiration. Have a great day. Get out and enjoy this great weather. And I appreciate your support of Canceling COVID.